down, doolies, blow the man down.
To me way, blow the man down.
Blow the man down, doolies.
I'm Paul Bennett at Shoestring Shipyard here in Millbridge, Maine. We're located along Maine's Bold Coast, not very far from the U.S.-Canadian border. If you've been following my 18-foot pocket cruiser sailboat build over the past couple of years, you know that I've been building it outside in my backyard, and it's now all wrapped up for the long Maine winter ahead. Well, over these past couple of years, I've received quite a few questions about the origins of how I came to design Ooh-Rah, why I came upon some of the decisions I made in the design. Well, over 2.5 years ago is when this whole process began. I did make a few videos in the beginning explaining what I was doing, why I was doing it, and I've put them together in this video, and so you can see the natural progression and how I wound up where I am today. So for all of you that have been interested in this, I think this is going to answer all of your questions. But I've made quite a bit of progress, all things considered, when you consider that for 6 months out of every year, the boat is all wrapped up and it's just sitting out there totally frozen, buried under snow for the most part. So there'll be other projects I'll be doing for the boat, little odds and ends over the winter. But in the meantime, this video will show you how the design came to be. And it's still ongoing. There are still little modifications. I change my mind from time to time. Even though I've settled on a sloop rig, I started thinking about maybe a junk rig. I don't think I'm going to go that far, but you never know. So sit back, relax. I hope this answers all your questions. And I hope you remember to like the video and share it. Share it with friends. Share it on Facebook. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and remember to ring that little bell. All of that helps. It doesn't cost you a dime. It helps me out quite a bit. So, thank you for watching. I think it's time to go sailing. I have a need. My soul needs it. Well, many of you are not aware that I'm a retired marine engineer and naval architect. And over the years, I've designed a lot of different types of boats, and even big ships. But I'm partial to sailboats. I've always been a ragbagger. And when I lived on Cape Cod, I had a wooden boat shop. I had designed and built sailboats. I've owned other sailboats that were built by other people. They came and they went. But then we moved to Maine, and I no longer had the boat shop. And for the past 15 years, I've been landlocked. But I have a serious need to get back to sea. I've been watching a number of videos of young people, young millennials, couples that have been fixing up old sailboats and putting to sea and hanging out in the Bahamas and down in the Caribbean. And I'll tell you, something struck a chord, and I said, you know, I don't necessarily need to be down there, but I need to be back on the water. So I went and I took a look at a boat. I'll show you a couple of pictures just shortly. This was a 26-foot boat, a Bristol 26 sail star that was designed by Halsey Hirschoff years ago. Bristol made a number of these between 1968 and 1978. It was Clinton Pearson that pretty much headed the company. I'm familiar with this particular boat. It's a sloop, and it's for a 26-footer. It's very big, has a lot of spacious, room, and it sails well. Had a good reputation. Back then, everything was hand-laid fiberglass. They used more fiberglass than was necessary, so it's a very solid hull, very well built. Only one problem is that while most of them had lead inserts in the keel, and it's a fin keel, it's a coastal cruising boat. It's not really blue water capable, although you could make it blue water capable if you put a lot of work into it. But there were a few of them when times were tough and the company found money scarce. Clinton Pearson got in trouble with the IRS. that in order to fill the orders that came in for this boat, instead of using lead inserts, which were very expensive, he poured a bunch of concrete and scrap steel in the ballast keel. Concrete and scrap steel is okay for a ballast keel if it's on the outside and not encapsulated inside the fiberglass, which is part of the whole hull. Because when it gets a little water in it and the steel rust, it starts to expand, it can actually split that fiberglass. You can split the hull open, and I guess it happened to a couple of them. But there aren't that many of them. So I went to look at this boat, and that was the first thing I looked at. Because this boat was being given away for free, and so, hey, free. The mast, the spars, they're all in very good shape, the rigging. So I went and took a look, and I looked down at the, pulled up a floorboard, and sure enough, it's the concrete and scrap steel ballast keel. So that in itself, I passed on it, even though it was being given away. It did need a lot of work, but I'm certainly capable of it. I have all the tools, the equipment, the knowledge, and the experience, and I have a lot of leftover inventory from my boat shop. I still have in storage, so I have all kinds of stuff. I have spare compasses, I have all kinds of hardware. I mean, I just have everything I need. But I did pass on it. So what do? I start looking at other boats. I'm retired now, I don't have a whole lot of money to spend. So I thought, well, I can come up with a new design. The more I thought about it, the more boats I looked at, it didn't really fit the bill of what I wanted. So I'll just design what it is I want. It'll reflect the size of the boat that I can build with what I have available. I can use a lot of scrap materials. It won't be all solid wood. I'm not a purist. I'm not going to build traditionally. It'll be more of a hybrid, but it'll be largely wood construction. I think it's going to be fairly heavy, blue water capable. That gives you a lot of confidence when the weather blows up and you're out there, even if you're not going that far offshore. It'll be a very small boat. It's not going to be very large because my wife is essentially a landlubber. She does not want to live on board a boat. She doesn't want to go cruising. She'll come on board the boat when it's at the marina tied up at the dock and enjoy a cocktail, but she really doesn't want to go to sea. That was determined when we first got married back on Cape Cod. And so this is just going to be for myself because I need to get back out to sea. I need to go sailing. My soul needs it. So that's where we're at. What I'm proposing here is to start doing a series of videos on this whole project. First of all, designing the boat, and then I'll go through building the boat step by step. If you'd like to take part, I'd love to have you comment. Send me your suggestions. I may not use them. I have the final veto power. But you may come up with an interesting comment or suggestion that I didn't think of, and it might be a cool thing to integrate into the boat. So this is what I'm thinking. This is on my mind. I wanted to put it out for this week's video. I'd like to hear what everybody thinks. I love hearing your feedback. And so, yeah, this old salt needs to get back to sea. Maybe you can help me get there. A little bit of encouragement, a little inspiration, a little advice. Love to hear it all. And hey, I'm an old fart. I'm not going to live forever, so if I'm going to do it, I got to start doing it now. What I'm talking about on this video is an initial concept drawing that I did. If you recall about my sailboat, first of all I talked about my thoughts of developing my own boat after I had looked at some older vessels that were being offered for free and deciding that I was going to design my own sailboat. And being a retired naval architect and marine engineer, it's not really all that difficult. I have the means to do it and experience as a wooden boat builder. So I decided to go in that direction. Well, for short periods it would be liveaboard, so it has to have enough room to be comfortable. It's going to be mostly coastal, but it has to be blue water capable for short jaunts. I'm not going to cross any oceans, not the North Atlantic or the Pacific. I don't have anything to prove. I have no need to do major crossings. But if I did want to go across to the Bahamas, or I did want to cross over to Nova Scotia from where I am in Maine, that's still open water, and you still have to have a decent boat that's capable of handling it, no matter what situation that comes up. Those are the considerations. So I'm going to show you a drawing. The drawing I came up with is just an initial concept sketch. It means nothing at this point, but you have to have something to look at, and then once you have something to look at down on paper, then you can start playing with it and you can massage it. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm at that point. You'll notice that the shear line is relatively flat, doesn't have a lot of curvature to it, a little bit tall there, a little bit more freeboard than you would normally see on a vessel like this. And I was thinking about liveaboard space. I'm going to change that because I want it to look good. I want a little bit more curvature to the shear line. I want it a little bit lower, a little less freeboard, because if you have too much and the hull is too tall above the waterline, that presents a lot of windage. You have a lot of wind force that goes against the hull in rough seas. That water produces a lot of pressure, those waves slamming up against the side of the hull. That can cause problems too. So in that regard, I am going to change that. That won't stay. There are a few other things that I'm not terribly happy with. I started thinking about it, just put a few lines down. You'll notice that it's a 26-foot length on deck vessel. So why 26 feet when earlier I talked about maybe between 20 and 22 feet might be okay for me as a single-hander, because my wife's a landlubber and I'll be sailing by myself. She'd only join me in port. 26 feet because that's the minimum length here in the United States where you can document your vessel as a U.S. flag vessel. Under that, it would have to be a state registration. And that was the initial idea, because there are a lot of advantages to documenting your vessel. Well, now that I have it down on paper and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, do I really need a 26-footer? Do I want to build that much boat? And one of the things that has me considering this is the fact that I was looking around for scrap lead the other day, visiting a few places, and there was one tire place that's near me that's been around for years, and they used to have buckets and buckets of scrap lead weights that I could melt down to use for the outside ballast keel. But the problem is that it came under new ownership, and the owners got rid of all that stuff. They wanted to clean the place up. They got rid of everything that was laying around. Now, all the wheel weights are steel. They don't use lead anymore. So they said they'd put aside whatever lead they can find. Older tires that come in, that they take the weights off, they'd hold on to it, but they don't have that big a collection. For a boat this size, it would be quite a bit of lead. 1 cubic foot of lead weighs around 740, 750 pounds. Probably need around 3 to 4 cubic feet, somewhere in that vicinity, and that's a lot of wheel weights. And I also looked at a few other places in scrap yards, and there's not a lot of lead to be found. I could go with the solid steel outside ballast keel, but now I'm looking at a lot more out-of-pocket expenses because I'm going to have to buy the steel plate. There's a lot of scrap steel around, but it's in small bits and pieces, so you'd have to suspend those in, say, concrete, like George Bueller does with a lot of his designs. Some other designers do. It's not pretty, but it works. But it's not as dense as lead, so that means you have to have a much larger keel in order to make up for it. So I'm starting to rethink this, and I'm thinking maybe a combination, maybe some steel plate to make a box. Whatever lead I could find could be poured into that. Inside it, that would become a mold, but also it becomes a composite outside ballast keel. That might work. So I still have a few things to research and think about. I might redraw the lines to represent maybe a smaller boat. This is all part of the design process, especially when you're designing yourself and you're able to do this. You have to look at all the different possibilities. Cost is a big issue because I'm doing this. I'm retired. Retirement income, very limited. I'm using a lot of reclaimed materials. If I could find enough lead, for free, people will give me, then that would be wonderful, but it's not so easy anymore. So I do have to rethink this. So maybe the smaller boat is the way to go. I really like the Phil Bolger blueberry design. That might be a little bit too small, have to be slightly larger, at least a little fuller in the beam, a little more displacement, I think. Otherwise, I really like the looks of it. I do like the lines. So I might start going in that direction. I just got that whole thing in my head about the documented vessel, and that's why I went up to 26 feet. You're going to see this progress. Every week I hope to have something to add, something to update, and I want to explain to you how some of my decisions come about. It will happen. Once I get all these details worked out, I'll start working on construction drawings. Then I can start laying out the keel. I've done this plenty of times before in the past. It's not my first rodeo. It's a limited budget, and so it's as I can scrounge and find materials and put it all together. I think one of the biggest expenses is going to be epoxy. 15 years ago, when I sold my property on Cape Cod and gave up my wooden boat shop and moved up to Maine, epoxy was, maybe less than a third of what it costs today. Talk about sticker shock when I started shopping. So that will be a big out-of-pocket expense, but most everything else I pretty much have. We'll have to buy some fiberglass cloth. I have some in inventory, but not nearly enough. I'm going to end it here. Just wanted to have a look at what I began doing.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey, and up she rises, way hey, and up she rises.
I showed you a design last week, a preliminary design, 26 feet in length. The whole idea being it could be a documented vessel. As I searched for the amount of lead that I need for the outside ballast keel, I discovered that prices on lead have really shot up. So I'm encountering a lot of sticker shock. Prices on everything are just through the roof, so just so much higher than they used to be when I was in the marine business. The lead cost, all scrap lead, what people want for it, in the quantity I would have to buy, is really high. It's much higher than I want to spend or that I have to spend. I started thinking I'll design a smaller boat. And I'm going to show you the lines drawing. I completed that this week. It's still a heavy displacement, long keel, monohull. It too requires quite a bit of lead. Not as much as the 26 footer, but after a few rough calculations, I still think it's going to be a little too high. So I said, well, 22 feet. I want to do some cruising, short-term liveaboard, every now and then a little offshore jaunt. Do I want to go much smaller than 22 feet? Yeah, that's pretty small, for that type of work. The thought occurred to me that I could go with a sailing dory, similar to the St. Pierre dory. The late John Gardner was fond of them and had a lot of good things to say about them. And of course, we all know that dories that were used off the Grand Banks for fishing, they hold a lot of weight. They're good sea boats. They do a good job. The St. Pierre dory was a larger version of those type of fishing dories. It was just decked over, had a sail rig. J. Benford, who's a naval architect, I think he's still down around St. Michael's, Maryland, has successfully designed a lot of sailing dories of a variety of sizes, and many of them have circumnavigated across major oceans. They do very well. And it's a flat bottom boat, but he adds fin keels to them. In some cases, I think he designed a 30-footer with a long keel. And then he has a smaller one, a 26-footer with, I think, twin keels. I think Annie Hall's book, I forget the title of it, I think it's Voyaging on a Budget, or low income or something. I read her book years ago. She and I guess her husband had a 34-foot sailing dory designed by J. Benford. They've sailed all around the world, and I think it was ketch rigged or Chinese junk rigged or something. They were successful. So I think what I might do is I'm going to start working on some sketches for a sailing dory, And now I could get back up to 26 feet if I wanted to, because a sailing dory is a relatively simple hull. I still need a lot of ballast, but instead of going with lead, as much as I hate to do it, I might have an external ballast keel made out of concrete and scrap steel. With the longer boat, I would have to make the keel a little bit wider in order to get enough volume to get sufficient weight. Everything's a compromise in boat design, and if you're not willing to compromise, you'll never get to sea. You'll never have your boat built. I'm back to the drawing board. I'm going to work on another version. I'm going to post a copy of drawing I did, the 22-foot displacement hull. I'll put it on the screen so you can see what I had. I'm going to take that sailing dory approach and see what I come up with. I think that way there I won't be spending as much money. And while I will be spending more money on plywood, it's very easy, simple construction, and the outlay of plywood is less than what it would cost me to buy the lead to do the other version. This is where I'm trading things off here. And I'm hoping that this time, well, third time's a charm is what they say. I've come up with the latest concept, and very shortly I'll put up a picture of the drawing, the lines drawing that I came up with. Apologize for the background noise. It's pouring rain, and we have a steel roof here in the shop, and it's making a racket. So I hope you can hear me in this video. Anyway, I came up with a 28-foot long, that's the length on deck, sailing dory, heavily influenced by John Gardner and the St. Pierre dories, and also some of the sailing dory designs by J. Benford. So I came up with a drawing that reflects my personal needs. 28 feet, it's over 26. I should be able to document the vessel with the Coast Guard. It has plenty of room in it, enough for me. With a simple sloop rig, I can make it such that I can single hand the vessel without any crew. Even at my age, I should be able to handle it. As far as the sloop rig, will it be a high aspect ratio or a low aspect ratio? It may be somewhere in between. Again, it's going to be simple. I want to be able to handle the canvas all by myself, even in rough conditions. I really can't afford to put on a roller furling rig for the jib. I'm going to be handling the canvas the old-fashioned way, putting hanks on the forestay. I have to be able to handle it, so I don't want too much canvas. I will have a few different size sails, different conditions. Although it's a dory, essentially a dory, it does have a long keel. Outside ballast will be a combination of concrete and scrap steel. And I have quite a bit of the scrap steel. I only have to buy the concrete. That won't be that terribly expensive. So I will be purchasing plywood, which I will use for the outer skin. I'm excited about this one. I think this is the one I'm going to choose. So you'll see the concept drawing, but I'm already starting to work on more definitive drawings, working up some of the calculations I need to make. Very shortly I'll have the beginning of some construction drawings completed. So now I have a plan. I'm going to start looking at where I'm going to start building the boat. In the last video that I had posted, you saw that I had settled on a 28-foot sailing dory. However, another big dose of reality, total sticker shock, coming to grips with my bank account and what I can actually afford versus the cost of things today. Radical change. The final design, sort of, I say sort of because along the way I've made changes to this final design, but the basic hull shape, size, and so forth, it remains the same. In this clip that I shot almost a year ago, I'll explain a little bit further, but basically I've gone from 28 feet down to 18 feet. Because I have most of the plywood I need without having to buy a whole lot more, a lot of the dimensional lumber I had, it was really just buying epoxy and various other adhesives, and I'm going to have to buy a little bit more fiberglass cloth. So some of the changes to this design, which I'll explain more later, Originally, it was based on a Sharpie, and the Sharpie had a centerboard. I really didn't want a centerboard, so I started out with that design, incorporating it, but I changed it and got rid of it, and it now has twin keels. A lot like a British-made westerly. That allows the vessel to sit bolt upright on the hod. If you bring it into the shallows at high tide and the tide goes out, she'll just sit bolt upright. It won't heel over. And so you can just get out and go ahead and scrape the bottom and clean it without having to haul the boat. Along the way, I decided there was a specific voyage I wanted to make with this vessel. And it's called the Downeast Circle. The Downeast Circle is actually a dedicated Facebook group to that. There is a cruising guide available for doing this. It's about $60. You can order it on Amazon. This is the cruising guide, the Downeast Circle route, and it's by Captain Cheryl Barr. She's a Canadian. She has done this route several times. She's gone clockwise, she's gone counterclockwise, and she's done it in both power and sail. It's actually a very good cruising guide. I've already had a chance to read through it. She contains a lot of really good information. Mostly it's all about Canada, but that's okay because I already have all the charts and information I need for the US part of the journey. I didn't have it for Canada, so this is going to help out quite a bit. So the design is really focused on doing this particular voyage. It comes out to about, maybe around 2,500 nautical miles or so, give or take. It's quite a voyage. It's a few months if I do it all at one time. A little coffee. It's kind of chilly out this morning, and I have to apologize for any background noise you hear. I have a metal roof. There's no insulation or overhead here in the shop, and so whenever it rains, that rain hits that metal roof and it just makes a lot of noise. So this is going to be the last video you see with regard to design, or focusing on design. I've already started building the boat. If you are a subscriber to Downeast Thunder Creations, you've already seen the videos I've posted through various steps of construction on my new sailboat. Then of course I had to wrap it up for the past 6 months over the winter because we have long winters here in Maine, and you really can't work with epoxy resins and various other adhesives in the very cold weather that we have here. In fact, even though things have warmed up and I just recently untopped the boat getting ready to work on it now, as the warmer weather approaches, the weatherman is calling for snow tomorrow night and into Saturday. Today happens to be Thursday, May 7th. Yeah, this is Maine. Snow is what we do. I'm going through those build videos that I posted on Downeast Thunder Creations. I've been trimming them down a bit, and I will repackage them and repost them right here on Shoestring Shipyard. By the time I get through all that, I should be caught up. All the new boat building videos for this season, I'll be posting those fresh and brand new. I hope you enjoy this video. This part of me rambling on is a lot longer than the actual clip that I'm about to show. Thanks for watching. Keep getting a big dose of reality. I've been out of the business for so long, and I'm faced with all the new prices, total sticker shock, and I start realizing that the boat has to get smaller. So I finally came up with the latest one. So the new one I came up with now, which I actually have, except for the epoxy, I do have the materials, and I can start building, and it's an 18-footer, believe it or not, from 28 feet down to 18 feet. It's a modified Sharpie. No longer dealing with a full keel. It has a centerboard. There'll be more of that. I'll see if I can put together a couple of drawings I can put on the screen just to give you a rough idea. I got the idea from out of Rule Parker's Sharpie book. The one I looked at was a 24 or 28 foot Sharpie. I redrew it. I just used ideas from that particular one and made it an 18-footer. It's okay. It has Spartan accommodations, but it won't have any of the fancy stuff you see with a lot of cruising folks on their boats. that's fine. I'm good with that. Because I just want to get in the water and I want to get underway. This will be a rugged little boat. It won't be spacious. It won't be super comfortable. All that's left now is to order some epoxy. What you're looking at here, I have redesigned my sailboat yet again because I'll be talking about that later in the video. I don't want to rehash it. But anyway, whole different design now. Instead of a keel boat, this is going to be a small vessel that has a centerboard, basically a kind of a Sharpie, modified Sharpie. When I designed the centerboard in CAD, I didn't know whether or not I would have clearance for it to swing. What I did is I printed this out in scale, and in this case it's large scale or quarter scale, which is equivalent to 3 inches to the foot. I wanted to make sure I had clearance right here it wasn't going to hit, and it doesn't. See? This material wouldn't be here on the boat. This would be the bottom of the boat, and the keel swings down. There'd be the bottom of the boat. See how the keel would hang down. And I'll go more into detail on that boat design a little later, but I just wanted to show you, I came out in the shop and I made a little bit of a model. You can see the outline right here, and this is superimposed, just thin plywood here. Put a nail right through where that hole's going to be. In real life, this would be a 3/4 inch steel pin, stainless steel pin. This particular centerboard will be probably around 1 inch thick steel plate. That'll give me all kinds of weight down there for ballast. Sharpies don't generally have a whole lot of ballast in them, if they have any, but in this case it's a modified Sharpie, and I'm not using a traditional sail plan, so that's why I thought it would be best to add that ballast. In most cases on a regular Sharpie it wouldn't be steel, it would be wood, it would be hardwood, and then they'd probably mill out a little bit somewhere in this region and they would put a little bit of lead in it, and that would help because it's wood. You don't want it to float back up. That would help keep the wood sunk down, you know, the centerboard in position.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor?